So MODOK, let's talk about MODOK. I just read through again Head Games, the series Head Games you wrote with Jordan Bloom.
Nice.
And I really enjoy the little coda you guys, I guess you co-wrote at the end, where you compare MODOK to Batman. Because I loved I love the way you played it. And I'd love for you to explain to people what that means, because at first you're like, that doesn't make any sense. But I think really when you watch the show, it becomes like a very, very beautiful analogy.
Well, he's living this extraordinary superhero comic book big life, but he, in Batman's case, he has to maintain what looks like a very normal kind of normie existence, and that takes energy. He can't. And I think in the movies, even more, they went into, I don't want to be Batman forever. I want to eventually stop having to do this and live a normal life. M.O.D.O.K has that same kind of ego and pathology of, I am going to have both. Not only will I be able to rule the world as Emperor M.O.D.O.K, but unlike these other losers like Dr. Doom and, people like that, I can also have a family that loves me and kids who respect me. There is no such thing as compromise or sacrifice in M.O.D.O.K's life.
What's interesting about sort of the journey, I was just talking with Jordan about this, is how this show was announced in 2019. And it was announced in a completely different scenario. It was announced as in the studio. And I'm wondering, was there any point where you were like, this hard work we all put in, it's all for nothing? Was there ever a point where you're like, M.O.D.O.K's not going to see the light of day, and that's a shame because it's you can tell, all the work that went into it. It's such a lovingly made show. And I'm wondering if there's any point where you're like, well, that was all for nothing.
No, I don't. I think we were always going to happen. We didn't really have the problems that the other shows had, and we were always full steam ahead in terms of working with Stupid Buddy and getting sets together and getting creating characters and building things. So if any of that was going on, that was behind the scenes, and I was not involved in that. I was more focused on the writing and the structuring everything. That was my focus.
And you mentioned the writing. You have sole writing credit on episode 4, which is a very standout episode. It's If This Saturday Be For The Boys.
I wrote that episode, but there's so much that went in from all the episodes get worked over by the staff. So there was a lot of contributions by other members of the staff on that one. It's just, that was the one that I broke, and that was the one that I was writing. But trust me, it was like all of them, they were a group effort. But yeah, I really like the idea. I love in comic books the whole kind of in between the issues idea of what do they do in the downtime, or what happened, were there adventures that just came to naught, and then what does that feel like when it's over with?
Mm-hmm.
If you are an egotist like M.O.D.O.K, how do you deal with that? So I really wanted to kind of get into that area.
You're writing, you're producing, but you're also the lead voice actor on the show. And I'm wondering, how do you find a voice for M.O.D.O.K where it's not always this comic booky parody, where it's sort of a mix? You come down occasionally and you sound more human. You go up occasionally, it's comic. How do you find that in the room, or is this just something that comes to you naturally?
It just kind of came to me as luckily I had a lot of time in the room to write and see how they were writing his dialogue. And then, you just kind of take a lot of the warmth and self-deprecation out of your voice, because this character doesn't have it. And then the moments when he's vulnerable are only private moments that he doesn't show to anyone else. It's more to himself or to someone who he feels like is inferior to him. He's like, if you reveal that I just did this, I will kill you. So there's that kind of, you just sort of play it that way. Just someone with no sense of humor about themselves.
I really can't believe that a M.O.D.O.K show exists, because I've been a fan of M.O.D.O.K for a long time. It's just, I feel like now, because of how all-consuming comic book pop culture has become, it sort of led to this. And I'm wondering, when I think back on your Filibuster episode of Parks and Rec in 2013, that kind of has become the forewarning or go-to example of what was going to come in the years. And I'm wondering if you ever think back on that, or if anyone's ever pointed out to you that's just sort of like the prophecy of where we'd be in 2021.
I mean, that at the time it was just me going, why aren't they yelling cut? I'm panicking. I'm going to dump everything I know out of my head, because I love that show so much. I didn't want to do a bad job, but maybe I was unconsciously tapped into something that a lot of people were tapped into, but it was all just kind of in the air, and it just landed on me for some reason. I don't know. I wasn't looking to do a prophecy. I was looking to do a job.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's as good as any reason to do it. It's just been interesting to me. I'm like, wow, that was kind of spot on. And here we are. There's a MODOK show, and I could not be happier about it.
Wow.
To just sort of ask you about what you're working on right now. I think are you working on AP Bio right now?
We just wrapped. We wrapped on Friday.
I'm just curious what it's like behind the scenes when you're on a show that's brought back out of like sheer fan reaction. Like, when you get that sort of concrete, people like this show so much they want it to be brought back, even when it's been.
It's very gratifying. It's like we did something that really landed with people and really clearly meant something and connected. And sometimes it takes a network time to see that because they're looking at different numbers or looking at different, viewing criteria, whatever. I don't blame the network. They were doing the best they could. And it was really cool for them to go, yeah, let's bring this thing back.
It's amazing. And so before I let you go, I'm wondering what you want people when they watch MODOK, what they want to see in themselves when they see this character that is like debuted in the comics as this like grotesque computer monster. What do you want people to see in themselves when they see MODOK?
I mean, imagine if you're on your worst days when you were jealous or competitive or feeling inadequate and needed that you had cosmic level weaponry at your reach. What would you do? Would you, that kind of feeling?
Amazing. Well, again, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me. And as a MODOK fan, I know that there are dozens of us out there. I'm very happy that this show exists.
Dozens. All right, thanks, man.